Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of June and the full moon that we have coming up in Sagittarius on the 17th. But there's going to be quite a significant shift of energy from the first half of the month, where we've had quite a few planets in Gemini, which is very light and social and full of ideas, into a much more dynamic and assertive second half of the month. And it really begins around the 14th of the month, because on the 14th, Mars moves into an opposition with Saturn. Mars is in Cancer at 18 degrees, opposing Saturn at 18 degrees of Capricorn. Now, typically these planets can clash because Mars is all about go, it's about assertion, it's about be speedy, it's about set a goal and get there as fast as you can, whereas Saturn is about not so fast. It's about caution. It's about delay. It's about bureaucracy or frustration or walls or borders or boundaries or blockages and obstacles that can get in the way. So if we're trying to achieve something and running into that frustration, it's because we need to integrate these two principles, because when you integrate Mars and Saturn, they can work incredibly well for us. This is about disciplined energy. So we have to apply patience to this rather than I've got to get there right now with Mars. And if we're planning for the long term, Saturn, this can be a very, very productive aspect. Mars is in Cancer, so it's quick to assert where it feels vulnerable. That's very much the area we're going to be in this second half. Any feeling of vulnerability or self-defense or that sort of thing, it's quick to strike. But if we can use these principles, as I say, to focus on a goal and work long-term towards it, this can be how we can use the energy at its best. So that's on the 14th of the month. By the 19th and the 20th of the month, Mars has moved on to oppose Pluto. 22 of Cancer, 22 of Capricorn. And this is about tremendously focused will, assertion and force. And then by the 23rd of the month, Mars has moved on to square Eris, that revolutionary planet, quite similar symbolism to Uranus, in Aries, 23 of Aries, 24 of Aries. So essentially what Mars is doing here is activating the square between Saturn, Pluto, and Eris in Aries, but it's becoming a T-square because Mars is coming from Cancer to oppose Saturn and Pluto. So this is assertive, it's willful, it's potentially militaristic. I see these Mars-Saturn combinations in people who go into the military. They're very focused. So it is very dynamic and quite challenging energy in a way, but it can be very productive for us. It can feel in the world or even in our personal lives as if assertive people or aggressive people are forcing their will upon us. But as I say, if we get into our own Mars and use it steadily and well, it can be really quite empowering for us. So in addition to that, from the 15th to the 18th of the month, Mars also comes to conjunct Mercury exactly and the North Node again in Cancer. So Mercury and the North Node are part of this T-square picture. So again, this could be quick words, speedy mind. Wherever you see a Mercury-Mars combination, it's quick thinking, quick mind, quick speaking. But just temper yourself so you're not speaking assertively or aggressively when you could just take a breath and the words would come out in a better way for you that you may not regret. But there's a lot of dynamism happening between these cardinal signs. And if you have anything really between 18 of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and about 24 degrees, you may be feeling this. You may be feeling stirred up. You may be feeling quite assertive. You may be feeling there's intensity coming in either from within or being applied externally or some form of control. It all depends really where, on which planets this is falling in your chart and which houses. But that's the kind of flavour of what we're seeing. And indeed, it isn't just from the 14th to the 23rd of the month. Really, it's this whole second half of June that we're going to feel that very different, intense, assertive, strong, willful energy. And that's going to take us into the eclipse month of July, because we are already under the influence of those eclipses happening in July, which I'll be talking about in the next video. But I mean, the first one, the solar eclipse in Cancer, is happening on the 2nd of July. So it's happening very soon into the month. And just to dwell on those, the eclipses can only fall very close to where the nodal axis is. Nodal axis is in Cancer and Capricorn, and it's going to continue in those signs for about another year. Now, Capricorn is the sign of the patriarchy. It is a masculine sign. It's top-down power, hierarchical power, the way power structures have been built up over the ages. It has a density to it as well. It has a kind of law and order. You have to obey the rules feeling about it. Whereas the North Node, that's our collective future destiny, where we're headed, is in Cancer. This is very much a female sign. It's ruled by the moon. It's to do with the family, homes, housing. It's also to do with the sense of protection and nurturing of those less well off in life than ourselves. It's to do with compassion, caring for others, coming in strongly. So these are the qualities that we have to develop. It's very interesting. It also is connected to motherhood because it's ruled by the moon. So it's very interesting if we just look at some of the recent changes in some of the states in America, some of the laws around abortion that have changed. So this has been a top-down application of the legal system of law and order and the way things, the rules that have to be obeyed on issues around motherhood. It's very interesting how that's played out. I go into detail on all of these kinds of issues in my monthly newsletter. And if you'd like to subscribe, just you can do that on any page on my website. So, but the compassion, the nurturing, the caring, the protecting others, that's where we've got to evolve to over the next year. It's interesting, the last time the nodal axis was in Cancer Capricorn, this is about 2009, we did have big issues around housing. It was the subprime mortgage crisis, you might remember. Now, that doesn't need to repeat at all this year. We can play it out in a much better way, but it is connected to homes and housing, and to some extent the economy, because the Capricorn is cardinal Earth, is also connected to the economy. So that's the kind of backdrop that we're going to have going into the second half of this month. And really that T-square that I've described, now involving Mercury as well from the 15th of the month, really most of that T-square continues right through to the end of the month. It therefore is still happening when we have our full moon. The full moon is at 27 degrees and 53 minutes of Sagittarius. It happens on the 17th of the month. It's exact at 1:30 a.m. Pacific and 9:30 a.m. UK time. Now, a full moon is always a culmination, a closure, a completion. So see where 2753 of Sagittarius falls in your chart. What is this? Are you earning the fruits of your labour? Is it falling in your second house? It's money coming in as a result of your efforts. This is the peak of the moon cycle. Or very often a full moon, because it's so bright, will shine a light and reveal things. And particularly because it's in Sagittarius, it can reveal more truth. It can reveal truth around legal issues, Sagittarius, and that can be personally or on the world stage. We see that with leaders. So the full moon always tends to reveal something, but particularly when it's in Sagittarius, it's linked to truth and legal matters as well. Now, I've spoken in the past how through this year, particularly until about October, we have this kind of seesaw between contraction and expansion, because the Saturn-Pluto South Node conjunction in Capricorn has a tremendous feeling of density to it. It's 3D reality. It's heavy, it's focused energy. So this is very connected to sort of tangible reality. So we might see where Capricorn is falling in your chart, we might have some sense of contraction or reconstruction around that area. However, the square between Jupiter in Sagittarius and Neptune in Pisces, which continues till about October, is completely different. You know, if Saturn, Pluto, South Node in Capricorn is sinking down and contracting, and this hot air balloon, if you like, of Jupiter square Neptune in mutable signs, Sagittarius and Pisces, is just a big bubble of optimism, joy, infinite possibility, idealism. You know, anything is possible. There's a kind of spiritual yearning for perfection to this square. So that can give a sense of expansion, particularly see where Sagittarius falls in your chart. And I've often referred to this in the past, where Jupiter is moving, there's often an expansion that happens in that house. Sometimes, occasionally, it expands something which is a challenge and expands that, but very often it is helpful to us. So we have this seesaw most of this year between expansion and contraction. However, at this full moon, we will have that sense of expansion even more. The reason for that is the full moon is in Sagittarius. It's ruled by Jupiter, so it's highlighting this square between Jupiter and Neptune. But in addition, the moon is at 2753 of Sagittarius. That is exactly conjunct our galactic center. Our Milky Way galaxy spins around this center, massive vortex of energy, cosmic and electromagnetic radiation, huge. The Jupiter at 14 degrees of Sagittarius is conjunct the great attractor. This is a massive vortex of magnetism in the cosmos. So both the galactic center at 27 of Sagittarius and the great attractor at 14 of Sagittarius, they are creator energy, massive vortices of energy. And if we can, therefore, they go beyond the laws of physics in how they operate. I mean, light can bend around the great attractor because it's such a powerful sense of gravity. So if you want to know more about these two points in space, if you go to philipsedgwick.com, he's an excellent researcher, astrologer, you can get more information. But essentially, when planets align with a kind of sacred geometry to these points, we are more able to access them. So we are more able to access a very, very high level of creator energy. And if we're even able to meditate upon those two centers, we might get some incredibly powerful information. Because the galactic center, if you have any planets around about 27 of Sagittarius, it can often make you very sensitive to energy. It can give you brilliant insight, and it's very linked to Kundalini energy, Kundalini awakening. Both of these centers are linked to precognition. Having information which kind of bends around the corner, if you like. I'm thinking of the great attractor here, but it's information which we're getting from that very high level. So, but it's also, they are both to do with the evolution of consciousness, because there's a constant pouring in, if you like, of new energy to our Earth. So they're very much connected to the evolution of consciousness. So this sense of expansion and of spiritual expansion is incredibly strong around this full moon. In addition to that, we have Neptune, which is barely moving the whole month. It's at 18 degrees of Pisces the whole month. It goes stationary retrograde on the 21st of the month. This is also the day of the summer solstice, which I'll talk about in a moment. So it becomes stationary retrograde. Whenever a planet is stationary, its symbolism is magnified. So this is about connecting to, there could be a yearning to connect to source, to the divine, to the ethereal. It's about unconditional love. It's about healing. It's about a very pure sense of devotion to something greater than yourself. So this is really ethereal and exquisitely beautiful that is coming in to kind of reinforce all that we're saying about the full moon, which is still very much influencing us on the 21st. So, and when Neptune then goes retrograde for 3 months, it's almost like pulling back a curtain on secrets. Neptune in Pisces is quite connected to things not being as they seem, so we may see the revelation of more secrets through those upcoming 3 months. But in addition, whenever a planet goes retrograde, there's a need to go back over the rebit, retrograde, go back over or integrate the planetary principle. And with Neptune, this is about our spiritual practice. So this is an excellent opportunity, not only coming up this month, but ongoing, certainly for the next 3 months, to find a default method of shifting your consciousness. If we have challenging events on the outside, big things happening in the world, can you master that frequency? Can you just drop into your spiritual practice? Breath work, candle gazing, whatever it is, just to feel that sense of anchor, sense of going within that connects you to the divine, that completely changes your frequency very, very rapidly. Then we really are starting to become, as I've talked about many times, masters of our frequency. So a super, super spiritual side as well to this second half of June, despite the much more dynamic and assertive aspects which are happening at the same time. So the summer solstice also happens on the 21st of the month. It happens at 8:54 a.m. Pacific and 4:54 p.m. UK time. This is always a wonderful time to meditate as well, same day as Neptune is going stationary retrograde, because the veil becomes thinner. Again, we are more able to access those subtle energies, that high-level information. And the ancient peoples knew this. That's why they had ceremonies on these days. So solstices and equinoxes are very sacred days, fantastic time to get together, either meditate alone or even better, get together in person or online to do group meditation, because the energy strengthens even more. And also it's very interesting that the day before each of the solstices and the equinoxes, the energy lines of the earth come into harmony. They synchronize, which is really fascinating. If you want to know more about that, check out roryduff.com, who has done a lot of research into that. So very, very spiritual around all of these aspects I've been talking about. Really, they're sort of building into that full moon. Maybe harder for you to sleep the few days before the full moon, because the energy becomes very high at the peak of the moon cycle. We also have another beautiful and very creative T-square happening. 23rd and 24th of the month, Venus moves into Gemini, and she becomes at 17 of Gemini, opposing Jupiter, 17 of Sagittarius, and squaring Neptune, which is now going retrograde, at 18 of Pisces. So this is a delightful energy. It's highly creative. It's a very fine perception. It can make you very appreciative of aesthetics and beauty and art. It can make you very creative yourself, or equally to add to this spiritual impetus, which I've just been talking about. But if we go back to our strong Mars transits, which we're going to have, as I say, all the way through this second half, it's very interesting that on the 20th of the month, Mars is at 22 of Cancer. By the 23rd of the month, it's moved to 24 of Cancer. Now, these 22, 24 of Cancer are very important degree points, because they are aspecting the opposite point. They're aspecting the 22 of Capricorn and the 24 of Capricorn. So when Mars, between the 20th and the 23rd of June, moves through those degrees, it will be acting as a setup, first of all, for the lunar eclipse that we're going to have next month on the 16th of July, which is at 24 of Capricorn. Okay, so I want you to be very aware in your own life and out in the world of what is happening around the sort of 20th to 23rd of June. What's happening in external events, issues of assertion or anger or dynamism, what's happening? Because that is kind of the first step, if you like, the setup for the lunar eclipse, that very strong one that we have in mid-July. It is also acting as a setup further down the road in January 2020 for the conjunction between Saturn and Pluto, which is happening at 22 of Capricorn. Now that conjunction only happens every 33 to 36 years. So it's acting again as a setup for that too. So it's like step 1, lunar eclipse, mid-July, step 2, step 3, that conjunction between Saturn and Pluto. And then ultimately all of this is feeding in to the Pluto return in the chart of America. Now Pluto has an incredibly long transit of 248 years. And so if we look at what's called the natal chart of the US, the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July 1776, the signing was at 5:10 in the afternoon in Philadelphia. Pluto there, natal Pluto if you want to call it that, is in the second house of the country's economy and the house of values. So Pluto very slowly in its orbit is coming back to that same place. It won't be exact, it's known as the Pluto return. It won't be exact until 2022, but we already are sort of into that energy and feeling it already. So this will be particularly important. Developments in 2019, 2020 ongoing will be particularly important for America because of that huge Pluto return. It could have implications for the America's economy, but ultimately that would be the world's economy too, because what happens in America tends to affect the world. But also this sense of values. You know, what are the values of the US? Are they changing? What are the values of the people? What are the values of the country? What do people want the values to be? Is it moving in the correct direction? Because all of our values, every single one of us, our values are going to change over the next 7 years because Uranus is in Taurus, second house, second sign. So that's all also connected to a real revolution in our values. But it may be particularly highlighted in the US. So what's happening now, this month, and ongoing, even stronger next month, and very strong in 2020, all of these steps, one of the big consequences is the Pluto return in America in 2022. There will be many, many, obviously, other consequences for us personally and in the world. But it's just very interesting to watch how we have such a tremendous build-up around 22 to 24 degrees of Capricorn, but that also will affect 20 to 24 degrees of all of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. So just observe in your own chart the developments that are happening. If you have planets or angles at those points, observe what kind of energy are you experiencing. Because in the second half of June, it's going to be on 2 levels. It's going to be extremely dynamic and forceful and forward moving. And on the other hand, it's going to be quite ethereal, big bubble, infinite possibilities, etc. And my personal view is the more we can connect to that very high level divine ethereal energy, the more we will kind of help ourselves to take a step back for anything big and turbulent that's happening in the world, because energy follows attention. So if we're giving all of our attention to big turbulent events in the world, we are likely to be drawn into it with negative emotions. Oh my goodness, what's happening? It feels chaotic. Whereas if we can keep our eye on a higher prize of devotion, infinite love, healing, source, we are more likely to be able to keep our reality more peaceful and more loving. And that is the frequency that we will then broadcast back out to the world. So we have a choice. We very much have a choice, not only in affecting our own destiny, but affecting the collective consciousness too. Hope you've enjoyed that. A lot there in the second half, can be even more in July. If you'd like more information about my books, my tutorial videos, and of course my newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. Also, if you don't know where everything I've been talking about falls in your own chart, you can download a free birth chart from my website, and please check out this link that's appearing above here, because that will take you to my store. You can get a 2-part tutorial video series that will explain not only everything you need to know for this update, but every update I ever do to infinity. It will help you. You can constantly refer back to those videos and you'll understand the meaning for you in your own life, and astrology is unparalleled in doing that. So thanks so much for listening. Enjoy the full moon in Sagittarius, that wonderful feeling of expansion beyond normal limits. Bye for now.